Production costs for the following program have been made possible by Gold Triangle Stores.
Hello. I hope that you're in a wonderful mood today because we've got a marvelous subject. It's a real hot scene, and it has to do with water. I hope you've got all your paints ready and that you're going to paint along with me because it really is an exciting, wonderful lesson that we have for you. And I'll go a step at a time and you'll actually paint along with me, I hope. If not, perhaps you'll become more aware of your environment. Let's look at these pictures and see. What color would water be, or might it be? It could be bluish, it could be turquoise, it could be dark ultramarine blue, or it could be very pale blue, very dark blue-green, or this hot scene of a sunset on the water. And of course, that's the one we're going to do. So we really need to use the colors that are on the warm side of our color star. In other words, this is cool, and we want to use all the warm colors. So before we start to actually paint, let's consider the following. This is our picture, and as you know, you have to plan a house before you build it. Now, in planning a house, you design it, you compose it, and that's what we do with paintings. We first think about it and we compose it. You should have one principal main idea, one center of interest, not too many. In other words, here, I'll show you some pictures, and you can see for yourself. As an example, this is just a matte frame, but it helps us. Now look, over here we have water, then we have a man fishing, and over here we have a net, and then over here we have the sunset. Now, it's up to you to decide whether you're going to do it vertically, or whether you're going to do it this way, or what interests you the most. You see, it's up to you because actually you're the one who's going to develop the picture and who will actually be feeling it. And if you don't feel it at the beginning, then what good is it? You actually should make up your mind about your reaction to it naturally, and then, of course, you'll be able to paint it much better. This is a cool scene, and the perspective in this, as you see, all goes toward one point. You notice all of these things seem to come down toward one point. That's right. Then, on this particular one, what we're going to do is look at all these different sunsets and look and see, because you should concentrate your thinking. And in concentrating your thinking, look at this. See the coloring on this? See the coloring up here? It depends upon you what you would like to paint. All of these things in the direction seem to go in one direction, toward the sunset. And that's generally what we're going to do in the subject, and I hope all your paints are ready and that you are actually set to paint along with me, because that is what we're going to do next, a real hot scene. And before we do it, we're going to analyze it and look at it from the point of view of what the main focal point is, and it's very easy to see that, as you can see. Okay, let's look at it now. And I have designed this with a little mat, and you can see that this mat has been broken up into different parts. Here's halfway, and here's a third. I've made these guidelines so that they help me see it. Now look, I can place this up and I can move it down. You see, so I can determine where it might look best. Here, I think if I put that at halfway, it looks pretty good. You see, this is the halfway mark right here, but we should never, one of the principles of fine art is never cut your picture in half. So I'm going to move that down a bit, you see, and then I'm going to establish halfway on my picture, and then realize that the waterline should be down about a third rather than halfway. Give you an idea what I'm talking about as far as composition and placement of the main subject? Great. Then take a big brush, and we're going to start off and dip the tip of it into a little turpentine and pick up some red. In this case, we're actually going to start off with red. You make a dot right here, and then about a little bit above it, we'll make a line that goes straight across. Now, in doing that, you see what happened is that you divided your canvas unevenly. The top part's going to be sky, the bottom part will be ocean. Because we have much more water in this scene, that's easy to do. Now, the next thing is to take a tube of yellow. If you have your yellow handy, take a tube of yellow and then squirt that along the sky and then all over the water area, because our undercolor, in this case, is not white as it usually is, but it's going to be yellow. Now I'm taking a knife, palette knife. It's not a kitchen knife, it's an artist palette knife, and I'm going to move this color so that I get an undercolor of yellow. Now I'm going to move it all over here. Yes, you cover the center dot. You don't need that right at this point, but it does give you a basis. You don't have to be too neat. Just get that in generally, and then switch to the biggest brush you have, a bristle, a long-haired bristle, and add some thinner, and then really cover the entire top part so you get right out to the edges. It's easier to do that once you've spread the paint, you see, with a knife, and then you get this out, and before you know it, we'll have a foundation, a sound basis upon which to build. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add some red, and you pull that right over the yellow, and what do you get? I hope you've got color, because you can see you get a beautiful, bright orange. That's right, when you mix the yellow, the red, you get an orange undercolor. Now we're all set to go. In other words, we've established the general idea, and let's look back at the picture and see what it's all about so we can get an idea of what we're doing and where we should place the sun. Now, we know we shouldn't place it in the center. That's true. But the best place to place it is at a third, where the thirds intersect. In other words, if you were to draw lines down, let's say at the thirds, and this is the third, and this is the third, where the thirds intersect, right about here, would be a good place for your focal point or your main interest. That's right. So what we're going to do next is take white, possibly with a clean small brush, and put the white right directly over that area so that we make a light area which will be for the sun. Then we can go around that, adding cadmium yellow, which gets a little bit darker, and then an orange red, which is a vermilion type, and then I'll add that with the big brush, and then an alizarin crimson, which is gradually getting what? It's getting darker as we go out toward the edges. And then at the very edge, we can use burnt sienna, which is a brown, and then possibly a little bit of burnt umber, which is a very dark brown. That, it looks like a mess, I know. And usually what we do is place the light color at the bottom of the sky and the medium color in the middle and the dark at the top. Well, this is different because our source of light is right here. So what we're going to do is just simply move our fingers. We could use expensive sable brushes, I know, and that's a good thing to know, and I'll show you the difference. Taking a sable brush now, and I can go back and forth within an area like this to get it started, and then blend back and forth with that brush. That's okay. You can do that, as I say, or you can use your fingers. It depends upon your feeling about it. Now that gives you the feeling or the movement, you see, the radiating movement. Oh boy, there's so much of that in this scene. I'm going to curve right down on this very, very lightly and politely. Okay, now we've got that started. Now what's the next step? Our next step is to start to place a boat. Now the boat is an important part of it. Let's look at it and see what it looks like. I don't get seasick. Let's look up at the boat and realize what the shape of it is. And in doing that, I think that it will be easier for you to realize that the top part of it goes straight up, almost straight, and that the general shape of the boat itself is triangular. Now I'm going to take the small brush and blue and brown and start by making a line down like that. That's the mast. And then make a triangle like that. Then come down and curve it over this way. Follow along, even if you're doing it with pencil or, you know, whatever your media you happen to be using. Give this a chance, and you'll see how easily anybody can create these different shapes, even at first try. Now that's the general outline. Got it? If you don't see that shape, you can't start filling it in or giving it detail, because that basic shape is what we need. Now, in order to make the shape a form, then what we do is fill it in and shade it. But those 4 steps are always used. In other words, first you generally establish an outline, then we're putting an undercolor now. I'm just pulling down some of that brown and pulling it right over that wet paint, and that gives it a little bit of shading by itself. Then I'm going to take some yellow and white and get that on the side because it's light on the side. And then dab a little bit here and there. Don't be too precise. Just give the impression of different colors in there. And up at the top, just some short little lines like that to indicate the different masts, and then one that's a little bit longer with a couple of these thin lines coming down. And what you can do if it's too fat is just take the wood end of your brush. Boy, we use everything. We take the wood end of the brush and scratch. See, you can scratch right through it, and in that way get a little bit of highlight, because what is that doing? It's picking up the wet undercolor. Okay? Next thing we're going to do is think of perspective. And in doing that, what we have to realize is that this has one point perspective. All of the lines are going to come right up to this point. So we can take the wood end of the brush and we can scratch some of these lines and have them radiate away from the boat. I'll give you a chance to catch up with me. And while you're doing that, perhaps you can listen to the following. Because you know there's so much to do, and I know I go along quickly, but I'll give you a chance to catch up now. That was just a matter of scratching those lines in so that we get the general perspective. Okay? All right, now, it is helpful if we have some aid, and there is an aid that's available to you, and it's free. There's no charge for it. I call it a space divider. You could make it at home if you want, or if you're kind of lazy, you can write in for it. There's no charge, absolutely. Now, this space divider is merely 4 strips. There are 4 strips, and I'll give you the address in just a moment, but essentially what they are these 4 strips of fairly sturdy stock, and then I have the numbers out radiating from the center. They all start at 1 in the center. That helps you see the center, and we'll be using that in the next few lessons more and more as we get more accurate. So you can have one. It's available to you, but please send in a stamped self-addressed envelope, won't you? Because it really does cost money, and we'll be delighted to send it to you. There's no charge for that, or to give you a listing of all the materials that we use and the different aids that are available to you. Send it to Conni Gordon, Channel 2, Box 1, North Miami, Florida, 33161. I'll repeat that. Conni Gordon, Channel 2, your favorite TV channel, of course, Box 1, North Miami, Florida, 33161. And please, if you have any questions, I'll be delighted to answer them if they generally apply to what the public might be interested in. So write to me. And remember, this is your show. And make it so. You write to me and let me know what your reaction is, and as I say, if you have any technical questions at all. So now what we're going to do is get back and start to actually create perspective. And how we do it? Very easy. And what is perspective? What is that? Word scares some people, but it just simply means depth. And now what we're going to do is get back to that and realize how we can create it. Where? How? What do we start with? Well, first thing we have to realize is that all the directional lines in the water seem to go to one point. So we call it one-point perspective, which means that we get the feeling of depth or movement merely because all those lines and all of the colors that we're going to put in next are going to point to that one place over here. Right now we have no perspective in color. We merely have it in line. See, these lines all lead up to that, and they converge as they get in the distance. Same thing up in here, where all the lines seem to go toward the sun. That's one way of getting perspective. The other way is color. Now, what we're going to do in order to get that color change is to darken the side which is away from the light So you take your big brush, you take some of your burnt sienna and or your burnt umber, those are the two brown colors, and we're putting in some lines that will indicate the dark areas. What I'm doing is just simply also adding some color down here, which will darken this area in the corner away from the source of light completely. So that would be quite dark, right down through here, curving that a little bit. Now, we'll take the brush and pull it like that, pulling it over like that, and that starts to get the feeling of the movement, you see, of the waves. Now, I haven't put the highlight on yet. All I'm doing is just indicating the dark side, like that, and curving it oh so slightly. You see, so we start to begin to get the movement which is in our subject, you see. See that, all the movement that goes back and forth in there? You can get that easily merely by what? A contrast of color. You actually need colors to have contrast in order for you to be able to get that feeling of light and dark, and that's what makes the difference. And it just isn't that hard to learn. Those people who are watching this show and who have written in and told me that you're advanced and that you would like to hear more advanced instruction, well, these next few shows are going to have a little bit more of the advanced techniques. But for those of you who are absolute beginners, you could try this and give it a chance, because you'd be surprised you can learn. I'm taking now a knife. And in taking the knife, I'm more easily able to apply the colors. In other words, you can put the color on your canvas many, many different ways. One of them is with the brush. Another one is directly with the tube. And now, what I'm going to do is put some white over in this section, just a little bit of it, not too much, because that is the area which is closest to the source of light. Now, that's another way of getting the perspective of it. And it being closer to the source of light, what's happening? It should be a lighter yellow. So you should use the yellow which is a lemon yellow over here. Then as it goes away, you should add some of a cadmium. That's a darker yellow. Then as it gets away and away from the source of light, what you do is add maybe yellow ochre, which is an earth yellow. Now starting again, I have a rag, and I'll clean the brush of the darker color. I have the white over here and the lemon yellow here. And you tap and dab so you get texture. Tap and dab, and then you work a little bit back and forth like that. See, back and forth. Don't curve it too much, almost straight, but just a little bit of a curve, back and forth. That's right. And then you can get some action in the brush stroke. But the secret of this, of course, was the fact that you wipe off before you start at the light color again. Now that's too white. So I'll put some of the lemon yellow over there and then work that back and forth and start to get some of the rhythm, and then curve it down and back and forth in between. You see the two wave areas. Now, I know water keeps moving, and when you're working on it out at the seashore or what have you, it's a little bit distracting when it keeps moving on you. But if you just analyze these things and realize that the movement of that ship through the water created this backwash that has perspective and movement and rhythm, it's not too hard. But you do have to concentrate a little bit. You have to give yourself a chance to see these things. And as you progress and work more and more with color, I'm skipping around now because I saw that the other side needed to be built up a little bit too. We just have so much fun. And then I'm going to add some of the reds and the oranges so that I don't lose that feeling. And then what we're going to do over here is realize that we can put some red in the wake of the action in the water here. And we can add some of these different colors. And you can use your brush, your nose, your toes, use whatever helps you. Or you might try actually tapping on with your knife. But look at this. I'm going to cut right through here and see if you can see it. I know I might spoil the picture, but what I'm interested in doing is guiding you to learn to see. And if you learn to see, you can do it. Now, this gives you the feeling of the fact that the waves get progressively closer and closer together as they get up near the boat. They do, because that's, again, another way of getting perspective. Another thing is that the color of the water is darker down here, and it might be brighter down here with accents of color. I'm adding these different colors, and at the same time trying not to lose the general motion of the wave. But what happens is that you're liable to, and you don't faint, you don't get excited. All you do is realize that you cannot make a mistake with oil paints. I'll repeat that. So many people say, what? That's true. You can't make a mistake. All you do is simply go over it, and that's it. Keep improving as you go along. Now, I've got a lot of color in here, and I see that I've lost some of the yellow in through here. But what happens when that boat is in front of the source of light is that it does not get lighter, right? It causes its own shadow. And this area in here should be slightly darker, right directly underneath here. It's just common sense. Your observation will increase as your abilities increase. And your ability will increase as you give yourself a chance to do it. Okay? Now what we're going to do is consider the fact that you're not going to be a genius, and neither am I going to be a genius in these few minutes, but I'll give you a chance to catch up with me. And what we're going to do is look at some of these different pictures and analyze just what the lighting is and what the perspective is. But before I do that, I'm just going to show you what this looks like in a frame. Hope you like that. Okay? Now, where's the source of light? We determine that in this. It's a backlight. And if it's a backlight, what happens? It creates very dark forms in front of it. Now, just let's look at these different pictures that I have set up for you, and let's see how the perspective is the same and how the lighting actually changes the subject. And you can see that in this, what I've done is prepare an overlay, if I can get it out here, which has some markings on it, just to show you the perspective of it. See, I have some of these markings on it. Now look, you see how all the lines seem to go up and actually get right in toward that? You've got to remember, you've got to learn to concentrate, you've got to learn to remember. And you see what happens when the lighting is in the back. You see how the colors change from the near and the far. You look at the contrasts. All right, now let's look over at this one over here. Now this one also is a completely different subject. Well, what's the difference? You see how that one-point perspective leads you right to that barn, how all the lines seem to radiate toward it. Even the lines of the mountains seem to go down toward it. So that there is a unity. There's a unity both in the concept and the feeling of the perspective, and there is a unity in the coloration, in that the colors are bright and full of texture as they're near you, and in the middle distance away from you, it's away from your sight. It's not how it actually is, but it's how it appears to the eye. That's what perspective is. It's giving the feeling of depth, you know, with colors. Let's see what this looks like now. Here it is in another frame. This frame is a gold one, and I think that the gold actually helps develop the picture better because it carries through the fact that it has medium values. Now you should look for contrasts, actually. Contrasts are very, very important. Why? Because without them, we couldn't see very well. Here, what I'm going to do is show you these pictures, and we'll discuss contrasts. These are actual photographs. Now, I collect them, and you should collect your own too, and actually have a file so that you can refer to it and see. But you should concentrate. Let's concentrate on the effect of the light. For instance, looking here, and then looking over here. You see what happens with that backlight? how it creates its own reflection here. What happens to the reflection? Does it get bigger or smaller as it advances toward you? You know, there's so much to see that you should concentrate on it. Now let's look over here and see it. Here's another one. You can use the newspapers, you know. I got some of these pictures out of the newspapers and magazines, and they have marvelous subjects that you can actually look at and study and notice, of course, that this source of light does get wider as it gets toward you. Same thing here, you can see it. But over here, the water is broken up a little more, it's more choppy. So what happens to your reflection? Well, it's the same thing. Oh, it's challenging and it's really stimulating for you to just train your eye to see more. Even if you don't want to become a genius, you don't have to, but you will, through having a hobby such as art, develop yourself. Oh, you'll just be a much more interesting person. You'll enrich in your life. And look at what happens here. Here's a photograph, just to prove, you see, that what I was trying to guide you to do in this painting is true. Here's a boat at sunset, and all the ripples in the water seem to be changed by the fact that the boat went through it and created a design. And you notice you can almost sense the cross rhythms as well as the fact that all the lines seem to guide you to look up. There's your main focal point. And you, the genius, the artist, you're the one that creates that. You are the one that there just isn't that much to learn, and it can be done. And in our next lessons, we really have some very interesting things. Now, our next time, we're going to have a nude male model. Now, don't faint, but we are. It's going to be a dog. And then after that, we're going to learn about portraiture, and we do have so much in store for you. And I know and I hope that this show has more significance than just watching it. I hope that I'm stimulating you to do something creative, because if you do, as I say, life is so much more interesting and richer. And there are many, many, many things that you have asked me in your letters, and I'll be happy to answer them, and I'm delighted that you write in. And some of them are as follows. I've had a request for someone who said something interesting. They said, gee, your easel looks so expensive. I don't think I can take up art. I'll never be able to paint without it. But don't be ridiculous. After all, it isn't the easel. It isn't how much you spend for paints or brushes. Of course, that does matter after you get into it. If you're a professional, naturally, you need to spend more money for materials, because the better the materials are, the better the results. There's no question about that. But I don't believe that a beginner should spend too much money to get involved in it, because you need just some basics, a couple of brushes, essentially. And insofar as what type of surface you should work on, you have to work on a canvas which has been treated. You can't just work on cardboard. I know some people have written in, they've said, gee, I didn't know, it doesn't work out. I'm working on cardboard. Well, it won't work out. You know why? The cardboard is absorbing the oils and the paints, and therefore you're losing your color. And when you go to paint, it drags. And that's very, very difficult. But what you should do, there are rather reasonably priced panels. They're substitutes for canvas. Of course, if you can afford it, you may not even like a stretched canvas, which is a real canvas put on stretchers. It's a personal matter, but you just don't have to spend too much to get involved in it. And take it easy as you learn, and you'll learn to see what you need. But your basic colors, you should have a couple of yellows, 2 of each of your basic colors. And I'll send you a list of that if you're interested, and there's no charge for that. Write me in care of the station. Don't forget. And until we meet again, I'd like to show you that we are going to have some more fun, and our subject next week will be that dog. Till we meet again, see it? I've got it hung up on the wall for you, over there. I wish you happy, happy painting.
Production costs for the preceding program have been made possible by Gold Triangle Stores.